It's fun. You know, I rewatched this film today, and there's this meme the kids put on TikTok. It's like, what the hell? What the hell? And I just had that in my head while watching the film today. For Natalie and Alexandre, I just want to just hear how the idea for the film came about. I'll just say personally, I had the pleasure of programming this film at Telluride last year, not this summer, but the summer prior, which means when I first watched it, there was a different president. There had not been a debate where the sitting president basically short-circuited. There were just so many things that were different, and so when I watched it then, it felt like farce. But watching it this morning, I was like, holy shit, this is tomorrow. It might have been yesterday. So tell me about coming up with the idea for the film and just, I don't know, just creating this this crazy-ass movie.
First off, thank you, Barry, so much from the bottom of our hearts for programming the film and for being here. And
yeah, just to give a little preamble, that we don't come from cinema, and we did not know that making a 36-minute film was not advisable. You know, then there was the question of like, who is going to program this film? And it was Barry, which is, you know, a dream come true. So thank you.
So the origin of the project is that during the pandemic, the Galeries Lafayette, which is a chain of department stores, the iconic one is Boulevard Haussmann in Paris from the 19th century. It's owned by a family that have a very strong connection to visual arts especially. The grandmother was a collector of art, and she would take all her grandchildren when they were little young boys to contemporary art galleries. And so it's really at the heart of the store's mission. And during the pandemic, everything was shut. These incredible spaces were empty, and they decided to open them up to visual artists, musicians, performers, to come and do interventions in the spaces. And this program was called By Night and was done in collaboration with our producers, Missia Films, Valentina Moli and Violetta Kramer.
Yeah, and we were in a meeting, a Zoom meeting. We'd actually started a collaboration with them to make a film at the Louvre, because that is our background, and then it fell through, and they said, do you have an idea in a luxury department store? And we were like, well, we want to like distance ourselves from that and do something else. And Alex, you know, like just pulled this idea out, you know, from nowhere. Like, what if we set it in a world where people pay for things by being slapped in the face? And I immediately was like, I think
What the
that's
hell?
yeah. I was like, oh, there's something there. Like, we just knew it was a loaded idea, and so they were like, okay, well, why don't you write it? Everyone was a little nervous, and so we went, away, and we started writing. We write by ping-ponging ideas back and forth.
And then it was Natalie who suggested that as a counterpoint to this world in which violence is casual, let's say it's casual violence, that there should be a flip side to this, and that maybe intimacy is absent. And what if people are not allowed to kiss?
Yeah, and everything that's happening in our world today has, it's not as if it appeared out of nowhere. There have been breadcrumbs along the way, while we were writing, there was the women's movement in Iran, the Women Like Freedom, and there was this young couple that had been dancing in the street in front of the Freedom Tower, and they were arrested and put, sentenced to 10 years in prison. And so the headline of the story is like, 18-year-old couple sentenced to prison for dancing in front of the Freedom Tower. And it just felt like, how do we live in a world where this can happen? And so, suddenly our film, which is absurd in many ways, didn't feel so. It was always inspired by the absurdity of our own world. So, yeah.
Very interesting. I see a few faces that I recognize in the audience, first-time filmmakers, short filmmakers, students. I think it's really wonderful to hear you say that the inspiration for the film came out of the limitation of, hey, we'll give you access to a department store, and you turn that object around and went, what's interesting about that we could apply our style of storytelling to? And out of it blossoms this really wonderful short. I think you have to be a termite and just gnaw at the wood that's in front of you. That's just a lesson to all the young people in the audience. Yeah, I was thinking about Romero while watching the film today. I don't know if you've seen this film, Dawn of the Dead. It's one of the few horror films that I think is worthy of an Academy Award for Best Picture. It was sort of the same thing. Romero just had access to these shopping malls and thought he'd apply his zombie films to it. And yet, you guys are speaking to so many things that are happening in the actual world. For example, this is a very queer film. I think the only intimate relationship in the movie is this triangle between these three women. Talk to me about then arriving at the place where you decided you were going to frontline that.
Yeah, I mean, for one, we thought it would be, this world is a world in which there's a lot of repression, but what is normalized, like their relationship between these two women, is not the problem in the world. Like that is not a taboo, and we thought that one, it was a very nice way of talking, indirectly about the policing of queer love, but also to talk more generally about like the idea of repressing civil liberties, of repressing like the act of love itself, which is such an absurd idea, because in our film, no matter what the rules are, and it's a tragedy. Well, you've seen it now. It's a tragedy. It's at the end of the day, like love is irrepressible, and these two characters do keep coming back together because they can't. It's not something that can be, pushed away.
But when a government tells its population not to love, it's as if it's telling them not to breathe. It's inescapable. But I think one of the things that we also wanted to do was to also just have queer love on screen in a normalized way. So there's a sort of like paradox to the film because it is queer coded. I think a lot of people see that as it's being a conversation about repressed intimacy, and yet it's also three women who are in love with one another and desireful of one another, and that's completely normal in this world.
Yeah. And I mean, for us, it was also important that these three women they're different generations, and they respond to this repressive society in very different ways. And which is what, leads to, what happens in the film. But, one of them believes in the rules of the world and follows them to a fault. The other one, lives very comfortably, but knows that something is wrong and wants to break out of it. And the third, is free, is so young that she doesn't yet really follow those rules. Yeah.
I just love how clean cut you guys are and everything's so very well represented. We watched this movie and these three women we're talking about are getting off on slapping each other. and as the film goes on, they get off more and more. It's like 35, 55, 56. I wanted to get you guys going first before we bring you into the conversation, Vicky. Part of that is I wanted the two of you to really express what the film is about, the characters, etc., and so forth. Cinema, I feel, is not the best medium for interiority, and yet you guys bring the interior voice into the film through the narration, through Vicky. You chose to not have either of the two leads voice the narration. It's almost this third person. For you, Vicky, how do you get into the characterization of how to perform the voiceover when it's coming from this almost omniscient sort of point of view? I think you bring a real warmth to it. So I was just curious about the process of getting there. Sorry. I'm here to talk about real shit.
Oh my God, I have to say it again. I don't really have a process. Ever. I think I breathe and I follow my intuition. In that case, I watch the movie and I see what it does to me and what it tells me, even outside of my brain. Because if I would have to, say what was my process, it would have to be a thought I had of this is what I need to do for this movie, because I think I don't think like that when I'm in my job as an actor, I just try to almost like I'm an animal and I follow something and then I hope it lands. I don't know. I really never know.
Well, then let me ask. So you watched the film before you recorded your voiceover?
Yes.
Time. Okay, that's process right there. We'll get
Yeah.
inside it. And then how did you feel when you saw the film for the first time?
Yeah. So I don't know if I ever told you, but the interesting thing is, so first of all, I my agent is sitting there and he knows I didn't read the script for a long time because I don't know. I have trouble with the internet and emails and stuff getting sent to me. I don't know. I'm very analog and I have yeah. So it takes for me sometimes very long to read an email and I can open the PDF or just click on the button. So, but my lovely husband, he read it and he said, Vicky, this is so interesting. And then you sent the movie and he watched it too and he said, Vicky, I think you really have to, if you have just so I did. I read it and then I watched it. And the funny thing then was, watching it, what happened was that when I got reminded, because when I was maybe 23 or 24 and I was supposed to end my acting school, theater school in Zurich, I decided to I had to do a monologue and I was angry at my school and I didn't want to do what they tell me to do, so I decided to write a story and direct it. And writing the story, what came to me was a world where you are not allowed to speak unless you own the word. So only rich people can speak, and therefore only rich people have love, because they can find someone and talk to them. And it was about a character living, who didn't have words and who couldn't. So watching this was very deep for me, because it reminded me immediately of this world I had created at 24. It somehow reminded me of what it wants to say about the world we are living in, because I always, since I can remember, am sad and frustrated, and maybe therefore became an actor, that I'm missing the words that I need to connect with my other humans. I just never find them, and whenever I try, I fail, and it's like, but I feel it, and I feel in the other person, and I know it's there in all of us, and I know we could just all live together so fabulously, and we don't have to fight. But it's so impossible, and I think this is a very deep part of my soul, and so watching the movie I was immediately connected to that, and then I just went in the studio and I don't know, I did it maybe once, and it was very fast. It was just...
You are the Miles Davis of voiceover actors. Could you guys feel all of that when you reached out to Vicky? It seems almost meant to be.
I mean, we've been big fans of Vicky's for a very long time, and we were trying to find the right voice and the right tone for the film, and we wanted it to be, because Vicky is speaking in French, obviously, a lot of people recognize her voice in English or in German, and we were like, we want, first of all, a certain warmth, but also detachment, because the narrator isn't there to give you any information. They're like a personality, and they have an opinion on the events in the film.
Because we often think an omniscient narrator has no perspective on the story, but if it really was a godlike narrator, God, as we are told by a lot of evangelical churches, has quite a lot of opinions about what's happening on Earth, and feels a lot, and perhaps the creator of a story feels tenderness towards their characters, but also mocks their frailties and their follies, and I felt that when we were recording it, I was...
Yeah, we were deeply moved.
And also very impressed that Vicky was able to bring a perspective to what could just be a statement of facts, as it were.
But she really did just understand what it was, she understood the film, and she understood what the narrator was, and it was very fast. But there are certain things in this film, the title is Vicky, that was part of, solidifying it into place, because our producers were like, it's so ugly, and we're like, that's kind of the point.
It's ugly in French, but in English it sounds good.
Yeah. But no, I mean, we were trying to search for a title that fit the tonality of the film. On the one hand, it's cold and it's clinical, and on the other hand, if you think about what it's saying, I mean, it's the most romantic thing in the world. And there's an absurdity in its matter-of-factness. And so we just felt like we had just, struck gold, but, no one, our producers were really nervous about it. And Vicky was like, if I saw that in a program, I'd want to go see that. And then
the more if I would want to be in a film like that. And Valentina, without missing a beat, said, well, Vicky, you are in this film now. And so that's how the title was born.
We'll talk a little about process of making the film, the choice for black and white, I think is really interesting. And then the length, of course, is interesting as well. I watch a lot of short films. They can be 6 minutes where there's an acute incident, and then it's just almost like a visualization of the object of that incident. 15 minutes, you can get a very express first act. Second act's the whole film, mini denouement. This thing, you guys are really laying it out there. 36 minutes, every scene's gotta kind of hit. You're really telling a feature-length film in miniature, or sort of like a novella if we're talking about literature. Talk about the process of deciding to make something in this medium long form. And I have to say, there's so many really thoughtful choices. I love how when the workers leave, they are imitating the symbol of wealth by putting on the makeup to exaggerate the scars. It's one of those really lovely touches that you can do when you make a short film at this length. But talk about the choice of making it at this length and just what that allowed you guys to say about the world you're creating.
Well, we weren't being strategic. We made this film coming from the world of visual art, principally, having grown up, having, like everybody, absorbed cinema, so much so that it's in our dreams, and really wanting to tell stories, and having scratched that itch a little bit in the world of visual art. But the thing that was really missing was this connection to characters, to be able to really emotionally connect to characters in a story. And that is kind of related to, on one hand, our naivete and just wanting to tell a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, realizing that we had to be able to switch perspectives between these characters, which meant that we had to afford them time. And
yeah, I mean, for us, like we made another short before this, and it was kind of a test, like, can we make a film, period? And then in the making of that, we were like, okay, we technically can make one, but what do we want to do with film? And we realized, I mean, the reason that we love film so much is because it is a cathartic medium. And we really wanted to tell a story that was character-led, where we at the end, we hope that you feel something for these characters, because even though it's an absurd film, what we're talking about is what it means to be human and what it means to love.
And that's kind of one of the rules that we set ourselves when we're writing, is that no matter how ridiculous the premise, we treat it like the characters as if it was life and death and really serious. So if you really didn't want anyone to kiss you, what would you do? You would cultivate bad breath. And what would that mean? And so we sort of thought through all of the consequences. And as you notice, one of the consequences of a world where everyone gets slapped all the time, therefore you would have bruises. Therefore, having bruises would be actually a positive thing. And therefore, people who don't have bruises would want to paint them on. It's ridiculous, but actually it mirrors so much of how our society operates.
Yeah, I mean, my family comes from communist Romania, and they fled in the late 70s and came to the US, and there are many things in our world, the stories that they would tell me that felt so ridiculous, so absurd, that they couldn't possibly be true. And so I think that there's a lot of things in our world that we become very used to, very accustomed to, sometimes over time, sometimes very quickly. And so we were kind of, taking these, absurd little differences that we did, for free. It costs nothing to change a rule, and then have that be reflective or make you think about, what it means, what's absurd about our own society.
And well, I could briefly talk about the black and white.
You can talk about whatever you want, my friend.
The black and white has two sort of intertwined reasons. One, we I grew up drawing a lot. We take photographs, and there's something about black and white photography that kind of shows the world as it really is, especially in a building like this, where if you walked into it today, there would be loud music pumping and lots of people. The marble itself is quite yellow. There are bright colors everywhere, but you remove that hue, you bring down the saturation slider on Photoshop, as it were. And what's there is this sort of autocratic building, because it used to be a bank. And so there's this like a fascistic bones to it. And in a sense, we start to feel that in a way black and white kind of shows things how they really are. The distraction isn't there, and it kind of made sense to have almost like it's a metaphorical X-ray as we're looking at the society.
It also allowed us to distance ourselves a little bit from our reality, and to, you know, be in conversation with many films that, like, you know, we're deeply influenced by, including, you know, La Jetée, or, you know, Wings of Desire, or the films of Paul Pawlowski. Like, there are just so many amazing black and white films, and then, you know, it also allowed us to get away from, the sort of cacophony of the store.
You guys are married and you direct together, correct?
We do.
Yes. How? As someone who's married to a director, I don't know why.
Well, you know, we bring slightly different things.
You guys can hear what Vicky said. She's like, you guys slap each other.
That's not that far off.
That's right.
We actually sit at on couches opposite one another and kind of just, like, you know, throw ideas out there, and we'll be like, that's a terrible idea, or like, that's a great idea, and then we, like, you know, or like we twist.
One of the examples of this was that Natalie had
this example always makes me look bad. I'm like, okay.
we decided we're going to have a story in which it's set in a department store. Who shops in a department store? It's a very female space. It's a space loaded with desire and power. It's going to be a story between two women. Who are these two women? They're going to meet. Okay, they're going to fall in love. And Natalie had this intuition that Malaz should feel like she's always known Angine, and that maybe she would say, "I feel like I've always known you." And I, on the other side of the room in the couch, said, "Oh, that's a terrible idea. That's so kitsch. That's so terrible. That, you know, that could only work if, I don't know, she pretended like it was a game." And then suddenly I would never have thought that. And it was my sort of like batting it away, almost like a ping pong paddle that actually spun the topspin like back to Natalie. And I was like, wow, that's a brilliant idea. And neither one of us, can I say it's a brilliant idea? It felt like it because, you know, we're trying to tell a lot of story in very little time.
So there are certain things that came out of, like, well, why is Malaz so interested in Angine so quickly? But, you know, Alex and I, like, we have always, I mean, from the very first moment that we met, we just, like, all we did was talk about cinema, and we were not working in cinema. And even though, like, our love is the same, we would bring, like, you know, like the films that I love the most are, like, really dark, realist films. Like, I love Iranian cinema. I love Romanian cinema. And Alex is, like, a champion of Pixar and comedy. And, you know, when you throw those two things together, you get this. But, you know, at the center of it, what we both bring and what we care about the most is the heart of the story, and a story that really, you know, is emotional.
Right. You have to be aligned as a parent in terms of what your values are, and that's very similar to when you bring a film into the world. I'm not talking about a film having a political message or anything like that, but a film expresses the values of the people who makes it, and when you're truly aligned on that, it's just the little detail. It's one frame here, one frame there that causes slammed doors and so on. But the big picture, we're always on the same page.
I should also say that, like, we did a pre-visualization, so, like, everything was planned beforehand, so that when we get on set, we're not there, like, bickering in front of our team. So there was a lot of planning, and then the one time that something, like, did not work out that we had planned ahead of time, you know, we were there like being like, you know, with two different solutions, and our now from now on we have learned that it is just faster to shoot it both ways than to argue about which one is better. And in the end, both of our solutions are in the film. So you know.
I would love to hog this conversation further, but no, you gotta raise your hand. We're all gonna go to the room behind us. There's gonna be wine and no cocktails. There'll be wine and water, if water's your thing. And you guys can pull us aside. Well, not me, I didn't make the film. You guys can pull these folks aside and ask them all the questions to your heart desire. Please give a round of applause for the team.